Good evening. Welcome to the Money Date. I am Anna and I'm excited to be here. I want to chat with you about planning big expenses for 2018. We've got to start thinking about big things that are coming up for you this year, right? Because all this week or starting in 2018, we've been focusing on little things, right? Setting our goals, setting our priorities, getting our spending out of control. Hi, Rob. Thanks for hopping on. But now, today, I found this song actually. So today I want to focus on figuring out how do we plan for big expenditures. Because let's face it, they're all going to come one sooner or later, one day or the other day. So this is a song by... It's called Meet Me at the Blue Cafe by Chris Ree. So he's just recently added, he was added to Spotify. So Yuri was able to pull this song. I love it. It reminds me actually of my childhood. So I'll play it a little bit in the background, but let's get into the Money Date. I welcome you as you hop on, say hello, let me know how things are. You guys know, for those who are watching this regularly, or those of you who are joining me for the first time, Money Date was created out of, my own struggle and frustrations. Actually, today, I was talking to a client about just, some chaos and frustrations she was feeling with her overall management system, right? And so what I did is I said, well, let me show you what I do. Let me explain to you how I've set up my basic operations, right? My finances, so that I don't have to have this anxiety and chaos in my head, not knowing where things are. And then the last thing I said, well, if you want to stay on track and keep things in order, you've got to come for Money Date. So during the Money Date, and this is me meet once a week on Wednesdays, here's what we do. We need to track three things. We need to track how much money we spend, we need to track how much money we make, and then we need to know what our savings goals are, because this is a perfect example of when we're going to be talking about those big goals that you want to achieve and how are you tracking against those goals, right? So that is the reason why I want you to always have that idea on a weekly basis, right? Because the sooner you understand what's happening at the micro level, the sooner you can outsource, right? Meaning, hi, Alphine, thanks for hopping on. And then the sooner you can have just a much better attitude about it. Hi, AJ. Hi, Carrie. Thanks for hopping on. So this is what we do as far as tracking on Money Dates. Now, I use Mint.com. is the app that allows me to track. I'm actually speaking to you on my phone right now, but it's an app that I downloaded on my phone, which allows me to aggregate all of my accounts, and I know where I spend my money, I know where income is coming from, and I can track my goals, okay? And the goals are in terms of how much have I saved for each specific goal. So there are other programs such as Right Capital, there's Quicken, all of those programs allow you to do the same thing. But the questions that you should ask yourself is, how much have I earned? How much have I spent? And what are my savings goals? And I want to break this down into the weekly data points for you. Okay? So that's number one. Number two on the Money Date is we share our win for the week. I've talked about this all the last 6 months. I started Money Date back in June of 2017. The idea is that you need to step aside from what's happening in your daily life and understand, yes, Alphine, I can repeat the app. So I use Mint.com, MINT.com. You can download it on your phone, Android or iPhone. You can also set it up just on the web page. You can use Personal Capital, has the same, hi Keith, thanks for hopping on, has the same kind of capability. It aggregates your accounts, and then you connect your checking account, you connect your credit card, and all of that data is being combined and pooled actually on a daily basis overnight, so that you can get up-to-date spending. And then Quicken, this is one of the original programs. Actually, Quicken now owns Mint, has the same capability, because some people don't like to have things on their phones, so they want to have more of a desktop kind of presence. So that would be one of those to use as well. Okay, I hope that's helpful. So I was going to, for our number 2 item that we accomplished on the money date, is that we pause for a second and we reflect back and think about what has been really awesome in the last week. So I call that a money win. I truly believe, and you guys, for those of you who are regulars, I believe in gratitude. I believe in pausing and appreciating the moments, right? Appreciating things that already happened to you, with you, however you want to phrase it. But I also believe that everything we do in life will involve money. It will involve some kind of capital, right? So therefore, our appreciation for the things we have, right, we're working on, should be somehow tied into the financial aspect, right? So what I do actually on a daily basis is that I write 10 gratitudes, 10, right, that I'm grateful for. 10 things that I'm grateful for every day. Now, I want you to start slow and think about it at least once a week, because this is our money show, so we can tie it into the week. So I have one, so I'll share mine, and then if you like in the chat, please drop a comment or just let me know what you think you're grateful for. Even today, even right this moment, hopefully maybe watching this show. So my gratitude for the week or money win is that, I've spent a lot of time in the last week of December doing a lot of planning, because I had sort of the time off from client meetings, and then that was kind of the strategic planning that I was hoping to achieve. And so what I realized, right, and this is only looking back into what I've done, right? I knew I wanted to get a lot of stuff sort of lined up for the year, and this is all in terms of personal goals and business goals. And so what I'm realizing now, this is week 2, right, in 2018, is that all that planning that I've done, those, it was a bit frustrating because I was stuck in the office trying, to kind of lay out, review, and come back. But what I'm realizing now is that every day that I come into the office, I have precise things that I'm focused on and I'm working, right? So it's not a chaotic schedule. Even though I have meetings with clients, I have, other things that I'm working on, team meetings, but I know that those meetings that I'm attending and those tasks that I'm working on are closely tied in to my goals. This is like the biggest sort of realization that I'm starting to feel more and more. So I am extremely excited to see how that plays out for me for the rest of the year. Because, let's face it, right? We can set pretty huge goals, right? And we're talking about big expenses today. So big expenses generally associate with big goals. But if you're not having a system, or if you're not having a structure that you can stick to, what is the point of all of it? And this is how frustrated I was until I said, it's enough. I've got to have this lined up for me. So how does this relate to my finances? Well, it does directly relate to my business finances, right? For me to focus on things that generate income, right? So here's an example how I tie in something that's not exactly, a money related topic with the money. So, but this is an example. So let me know in the chat, what are you guys grateful for? It may be just a simple thing as having a cup of coffee, which I am very grateful for every morning. Oh, by the way, one thing to share as well, I switched to, and I'm still kind of a skeptic about it, but per request of my husband, I switched from using sugar, hi Wanda, to using Splenda in my coffee. I can't say I love the taste, but the idea is to have less sugar, so we'll see. Is this a New Year's resolution? I don't know, but I'm hoping that's going to last more than just January kind of thing. So, all right, I want to get into the actual meat of our discussion. So big expenses, all right? we know that, and this is the thing that, for those of you watching live, or if you're going to watch this in replay, I'm going to sort of give you the live preview of what happens if you were a client and you were come in and sit in front of me here in the office, right? These are the exact conversations and discussions I'm having with clients in terms of helping them think bigger, right? Because we get caught up in all these little things, paying bills, spending money, all of those sort of daily activities. And what we find ourselves sometimes is that when big things come up, right, and we need to be prepared financially to handle them, we're not quite ready. So how do you kind of remove all of that aside and think globally, think big, think long term, right? Even though we really are focusing on the next 12 months. Okay, so I have a 3-step process that I will share with you. So my step number 1 is to plan ahead. That's step number 1. So what you have to do is determine what kind of big expenses you're anticipating for 2018. Hi Karen, thanks for hopping on. So for 2018, what are you planning to achieve? All right, I'll give you some examples because I want you to, if you have a pen and a paper, write these down because I think they're going to be useful in terms of laying out your own examples. So here's some examples that come up to mind, right? Number 1, vacation. Are you planning to take a vacation? How about buying a new car? I actually had a client tell me this morning that they had to buy a car just because their old one died on them. So they had to do it right before the end of the year. Are you planning to buy new furniture? Are you planning to buy new appliances, right? So I'm trying to think of large expenses that are not going to be handled easily out of your cash flow, right? That's not something that you necessarily can pay for out of your paycheck. If you can do that out of your paycheck, that's great, but I think it's still prudent to figure out what those expenses are. Are you going to give gifts? Are you going to go to weddings, bar mitzvahs, birthdays, right? What are you going to spend large amounts of money that are not part of your overall monthly spending? How about donations? Are you planning to make donations where you haven't really, thought through? So make a list of all of those things. Just kind of, dream for a second. This is the fun part, right? Because the idea is not to think about what you don't have or can't do. The idea is to think, here's what I want to do, and then lay out a plan, right? Very precise and actionable plan, how you're going to accomplish it, okay? So we've got our planning piece in order. We dream big, right? That's the idea, right? Big things that you want to accomplish. Number 2 step is timeline. So I want you to think about, we are in January, second week in January, right? So I want you to think about the rest of your year in terms of months, right? And so as you're thinking about these big expenditures that you're planning, think about when might that expenditure happen, right? Would it be something in 3 months? Are we talking about April or May? Or are we really talking more like June, July, August? Or are we talking about the end of the year and fall? So timeline is something that works really well because that gets you a sense of where you are, right? So you're right here in January and then you're trying to get to, let's use an example of August. I don't know, I like August. It's summer. It's actually in San Francisco, it's not the favorite months because it's pretty cold for summer, which is about 60 degrees. And I think some of you will say, well, 60 degrees is not cold. It's cold in the summer. So how much time do you have until you need to come up with funds for that big goal? Okay? And then finally, right, step 3, which is getting to work. Getting to work on the actual financial piece of what we're trying to accomplish. So we have our list. We know when it's going to happen, what the actual money aspect look like. Okay? So I'm going to give you some examples. So hang tight. All right, so the first step under the step 3 is actually doing the numbers. So let's use an example of a vacation, okay? Let's say that you planning to go, or you wanting to go, to Italy in August of 2018. You have saved up $2,500 for this big trip. The overall trip cost will be $7,500. That's about reasonable for two people to go to Europe, right? Because you have to buy airplane tickets, hotels, and all that stuff. So is it a luxurious trip? For some, it might be. For others, it might be just, sort of on the budget / average, right? So I just want to give you an example. You can use any kind of numbers. So we have a goal of $7,500, Europe trip, Italy, August 2018. We have $2,500 that we already saved up. We have we have February, March, April, May, June, July, August. So about 6 months or so until we're going on our trip. So if we have $2,500 and we need $7,500, so you subtract that from what you already have, it will be about $4,800, $4,500 that you still have to come up with for the remainder of the timeline. So you see how the timeline and the actual trip you're going to take. Now, when I'm talking about these numbers in general, I'm referring to what you're actually going to spend, right? The complete cost of this goal. So the question that I have for you, right, is to think about, what are you going to do? How are you going to fund this trip? So one way you can do is you can save. So if you need to come up with $5,000 to fund the rest of this trip, and you have about 5 to 6 months, that's about $1,000 or so, right? Round numbers that you need to save, right? Or we talked about this a couple of money dates ago. How about generating the extra income, right? So I don't always want this to be about saving. Can you do something that generates income? Can you have a side job, right? That gets you additional income, so that now you kind of have a structure of how funding big goals works. So that you can now, not instead of pulling $1,000 out of your overall spending, you can now fund that goal with earning the extra income. That's the structure that I really want you to get set for yourself. Because we all can reduce our spending and come up with the money, right? What I don't want you to do is have these goals, but not have a plan of how you're going to pay for them. Because what happens in those cases? Hi, Eleanor, Australia on the line. Thanks for joining. So what happens in those cases when you don't really plan and then you just come up with ways to pay for it at the last minute? Well, a lot of us go into using credit cards, creating debt. Hi, good to have you. Thanks for watching. Right? So which is not what we want. So I want you to be a little bit more strategic. And this is right now, okay, is the best time to do this. You can do this any month of the year, but I feel like if you give yourself this exercise and this timeline, you're gonna set pretty straight path on how you're gonna get there. Hi, Stacy. Thanks for hopping on. So I'm going to give you another example, which is maybe just different numbers, but a little bit less intimidating in terms of, oh my gosh, how am I going to come up with $1,000 because I want to go on a fancy vacation to Italy. So how about an example where you want to buy a new furniture set? Actually, Yuri and I are due. So I do want to go on vacation. Actually, Italy. These are real examples that I'm using from my own life. So I do want to go to Italy, and we need to buy a new furniture set for our living room. So, but here's just something that came to mind. So let's say that our goal was to buy this furniture set in October. I don't know why October, but that's what I was kind of thinking. Hi, Lee. Thanks for hopping on. So, and let's say it costs $1,800. I have no reserves for it, right? I just kind of came up with the goal, so I have time, but I have no reserves. So if I have about, 9 months or so until we're going to buy the set, right, furniture set for $1,800, I could come up out of my overall spending, right, with $200 a month that I can put aside, right, for something like that. Or, right, if I didn't have to reduce my overall budget, why don't I go and create $200 a month? Can I go and sell an online course? I can, right? Can I have another client that engages my services that will pay me the whole $1,800? Yes, I can. And those are the things I was talking about to you earlier as far as how I've planned out my schedule that aligns, right, with my bigger goals. I have a big goal and then smaller steps underneath of it so that I know what I have to do on a daily, on a weekly, on a monthly basis. So that's another less intimidating example that you can use in terms of, all right, it's a bigger expense out of my cash flow, but it's still manageable if you plan for it ahead, right? So now, what I also like to think about is that I kind of like this concept of buckets. So for example, if we go back to the first example I gave of the travel, right? So if we're saving for this kind of a big travel expense, why don't we set up a separate account? Now, I know you can do, Eleanor, I think you can do the same thing in Australia. You can have a separate savings account, right? So set that up and sort of have the income or the savings you're going to deposit into that bucket. That way, you actually have your eye on a target. That's the goal. You've got to have something that you can look at, right? And it makes sense and you feel like you're accomplishing, right? So if you had a separate account for that particular goal, then you can actually come in and check. And that's why we have money dates. So I'm glad you're joining me. All right. Yes, I knew you could do that anywhere. So, so that's one way to do it, right? Some people like to have everything sort of mixed up into, one or two accounts. I really do like to have buckets because that keeps me aligned. And anytime I use one of my apps for tracking, I can see what my goals are. I can see what the amount is to the tracking, right? So it gives me that live updates that I actually want to have. Now, the last piece that I want to share with you, right? Aside from these big expenses, and by the way, this same concept can be applied for goals that are going to happen in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years. This is how you plan for big things that you have to sort of break in chunks, right? It's like this big elephant in the room. How do you eat the elephant? You sort of start small steps, manageable steps, because we all can do those steps. So the last piece, right, which I always, I haven't talked about this in a while, but I want you to go back. This is a good time of the year again. And remember, how is your emergency fund doing? I call that a curveball account. Do you have an emergency fund? Because what tends to happen over the holidays, we tend to sort of overspend, right? You won't believe how many clients I've heard over these last 2 weeks mention, oh my gosh, we've overspent over Christmas break, right? New Year's and Christmas holidays just completely, went overboard. And that's fine, I understand. I think I'm guilty of that as well. But how is your emergency fund? So if you had a goal of having a certain amount of money in your emergency reserves and it's down in the balances, maybe we need to focus on replenishing that too, okay? So I want you to have these things running concurrently, right? It's not one or the other, just like we have our basic structure in place, right? We know where all of our bills are going. Everything is on auto pay. We check weekly. Now we're adding this extra component of these bigger things, right? Bigger goals that we're planning for. I hope this is helpful. Let me know what questions you have if you want me to clarify some of the things. But before I close, I want to share a quote with you because I think it's very relevant and you guys know I like quotes. So here it is. Do not save what's left after shopping, but spend what's left after saving. And this is by Warren Buffett. So think about this. If you create a system for yourself where you basically, right, what I call pay yourself first, right? And that means you have specific targets that you want to achieve and you have the savings going into those directions. All of your basic living expenses are covered. What's left after that is really probably your play money. And so that's the better approach in terms of how do you have a system, whether you're in the United States or Australia, right, that is backed up by something that is manageable, right, something that you can track, and something that makes sense. Thanks for joining me this evening. Let me know what questions you have, and I'll see you guys next week.